Hey, before we get into this, if you're new here, welcome to Borderlines. This is the channel where we look at the stuff happening in plain sight that somehow nobody's actually talking about. Okay, let's get into it, because this one moves fast. There's a specific kind of silence that shows up right before something breaks, not the calm kind. The kind right before a flight gets canceled, when the gate agent won't look you in the eye, and the screen still says, on time, even though everyone in the terminal already knows it isn't. That's the silence that landed in Washington this week. A vice president who was supposed to be on a plane to Switzerland. A hotel in the Alps, fully staffed, fully booked, completely empty. And a White House that spent 2 days insisting everything was fine, right up until the moment it admitted it wasn't. Here's the official story, the one you've probably already half absorbed from a headline. The U.S. and Iran signed a 14-point memorandum of understanding, 60 days to turn it into something real. JD Vance was supposed to fly out, sit down with Iranian negotiators at a mountain resort outside Lucerne, and start working through the details. Then, on Thursday night, the trip just stopped. Staff at Joint Base Andrews packed and ready. Reporters in Switzerland already checked in. And the deal that Donald Trump had been calling, and I'm using his word here, unconditional surrender, suddenly looked like it couldn't survive contact with its own first week. Now, the version coming out of the briefing room is logistics, scheduling. Never simple or predictable is the phrase the White House statement actually used, which is the diplomatic equivalent of a contractor telling you the delay is supply chain issues, when what they mean is somebody didn't pour the foundation right. The real reason is Lebanon. Always Lebanon. 4 Israeli soldiers killed when a Hezbollah device hit their tank. Israel responded by killing dozens of people in strikes across the south. Dozens more in the days that followed. Beirut, twice in 2 weeks. And Iran looked at Clause 1 of the agreement it had just signed, the line that says all fighting stops on all fronts including Lebanon, and said, not until that's actually true. So, why does this matter if you're sitting in the United States with zero plans to ever visit the Bekaa Valley? Because this is the part where it stops being a regional story and becomes a Trump story. He built his entire return to office on a specific promise. No more endless wars. America comes first. I will end conflicts other presidents couldn't. And what he's actually managing right now is a ceasefire he can't fully enforce, with an ally who's openly told him, according to reporting out of Israel, that it does not consider itself bound by the part of the deal it doesn't like. Netanyahu kept troops in southern Lebanon. Hardliners in his own coalition went further. One minister reportedly said, the whole country should burn. That's not a partner working with you. That's a partner working you. And here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable for the administration, because the deal that was supposed to be a win is testing as exactly the opposite. A new AP-NORC poll, conducted right as Trump was telling reporters an agreement had been reached, put his approval on Iran at 34%. 65% of the country disapproves, and it's not just the usual partisan math. Some Republicans are unhappy too, specifically about Iran getting to sell its oil freely again, and the Strait of Hormuz reopening without tolls for 2 months, in exchange for a ceasefire that, 4 months in, doesn't seem to actually stop anyone from shooting at anyone. Trump's framing has been unconditional surrender. That phrase does a lot of work for a man trying to manage a midterm year, but the regime in Tehran is still standing. It's still negotiating the terms of the Strait of Hormuz. It still has a seat at the table determining what happens with its own nuclear program. And now, apparently, a say in whether Israel, a country it isn't even party to the agreement with, gets to keep fighting in Lebanon. That is not what surrender usually looks like. That's leverage. Iran found a card in its own ceasefire, and it's playing it. Which brings us to JD Vance, who, in defending all of this, said something on camera that I think tells you more about where this administration actually is than any policy line does. He said Trump is, quote, the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And then he added that if he were in the Israeli cabinet, he might not be attacking the only powerful ally he has left anywhere on earth. Take a second with that. That's not a vice president defending an ally. That's a vice president negotiating with one, in public, on television, because apparently that's what it takes now. And the read in Tehran is obvious. They're watching daylight open up between Washington and Jerusalem, And daylight is exactly what an Iranian negotiating strategy is built to walk through. So, where does this actually leave the United States? Best case, the version the White House wants you to believe. This was a scheduling hiccup. Mediators in Egypt sort out the Lebanon language this weekend. Vance reschedules. And 60 days from now, there's a real framework on the table. Possible. People have been wrong about Middle East ceasefires holding before, in both directions. Worst case, the one nobody in the briefing room wants to say out loud, this was the first crack in a deal that was already more fragile than the signing ceremony suggested. And every cycle of strikes in Lebanon makes the next round of U.S.-Iran talks a little harder to schedule, a little harder to trust, a little closer to the moment where somebody in Washington decides the 60-day clock just isn't worth running anymore. And in that version, the cost isn't paid in Beirut or Tehran first. It's paid here, in a war that was never popular, getting harder to end, heading into a year when Donald Trump very much needed it to already be over. He wanted a deal he could call a surrender. What he's got, for now, is a vacation home in Switzerland that nobody's using and a vice president doing diplomacy by press conference. You have to admire the confidence of calling that finished. I'm not telling you how this ends, because nobody actually knows yet. Not the White House, not Tehran, not Jerusalem. What I can tell you is to watch the Lebanon ceasefire, not the press releases out of D.C., because that's where this whole thing actually gets decided. If you want to keep tracking this as it moves, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.